Throughout the 2010s, Apple seemed more focused on making their laptops thinner than actually improving performance. In the end, that led to some pretty serious heat issues, so Apple did something they very rarely do. They backpedaled and released this, the 2019 16-inch MacBook Pro. It was bigger, heavier, and crucially more powerful than anything before it. Apple went from flexing how much MacBook you didn't get to advertising the overall power and performance of this thing. And performance was good. 8-core processors, a big graphics card upgrade powering a world-class display, and many more best-in-class features. Almost 7 years later though, how does the 2019 MacBook Pro compare to other used MacBooks for the price? Well, I bought this one for £245, that's $330. Having it in front of me, I'm starting to think this is quite an impressive laptop for the money. The screen is just mind-blowing. So high quality and with such a wide colour output. It's a league above and beyond what any of the 13 or 14-inch MacBooks can offer even now. Let's get the obvious out of the way first though. This laptop was released barely a year before Apple's M1 line, the first computers with processors they designed themselves. M-series chips were and still are ridiculously efficient and far faster than anyone thought they'd be at the time. M1's release significantly overshadowed the 2019 MacBook Pro line, and that's why the value of these things has absolutely tanked over the last few years. Realistically, the M1 MacBook Air is a much better buy if you're after raw processing power. The CPU is more powerful in single and multi-core workloads, and it doesn't get hot or use as much power. Believe the hype. But for the sake of argument, let's say you wanted to buy one of these instead of an Apple Silicon Mac. Are there many benefits? Well, as I mentioned, the audio-visual experience is sublime. There's a 6-speaker array inside this 16-inch Pro, and to be honest, it's probably the reason Apple's reputation for having the world's best laptop speakers began in the first place. The sound quality is still on another level, especially if you're watching films or TV shows, as this goes louder than a lot of other laptops might for the same kind of price. Every audible frequency seems to sound pretty good. There's an impressive amount of bass too for such a small set of drivers. I touched on the screen already, but like I said, this 3072 by 1920 panel is still among the best you might find on a laptop. It might only go up to 60Hz, but there's seriously impressive color reproduction, absolutely good enough for doing professional visuals. The display also goes up to 500 nits of brightness. That's decently brighter than the M1 Air's 400, but admittedly not competitive with any of the 2024 and newer MacBooks. There is one diamond in the dirt a lot of people don't think about here though. The 16-inch 2019 Pro doesn't have a notch. That's a pretty big win in my books, and the bezels are adequately thin regardless. Design is fairly subjective in laptops, but you can't fault the quality of this one. There's an impressively sized glass force-touch trackpad in the middle, with a scissor switch keyboard just above. Atop the keyboard stands the relatively divisive touch bar. I'm not really bothered about this thing, but it's kind of novel having a second screen, an OLED one at that. The touch bar is still fully integrated with macOS, so it's pretty simple to use. This MacBook came in silver or space grey, and while I'm normally a silver enjoyer, this one is one of the better looking Macs in grey. It's a really premium feeling computer, as you'd expect for something that cost up to $8,000 when it was brand new. Time to talk about performance now. The 2019 16-inch MacBook Pro is powered by 9th generation Intel i7 or i9 chips. I've got an i7 variant here, which actually might not be such a bad idea at this price point. Sacrificing a little bit of performance to keep the fans from kicking in due to heat could work to our advantage. 9th gen Intel laptop chips were a decent jump ahead in performance at release, but they did run hot. This laptop's fans start running once you open more than a few tabs in Safari. All that heat to be over 40% worse than the M1 MacBook Air in single core and 30% in multi-core workloads. Overall though, this MacBook can still run a decent race if you let it. There are 6 cores in the i7 chips and 8 in the i9s, leading to pretty usable 1080p video editing and a very solid photo editing and audio production experience all round. I wouldn't recommend working on one of these every day, but if you do need to experiment from time to time, there is some power there. A surprising win for this MacBook is its capability in the graphics department. There are Radeon 5000 series dedicated graphics chips inside these, which are not altogether bad for running games in Windows 10 or 11 through Boot Camp. Yes, Windows 10 and 11 can be installed natively, and work pretty much as well as a regular Windows laptop would. I've played GTA 5 just fine on this laptop, as well as Minecraft, Doom 2016, and even Cyberpunk 2077 at about 30 FPS. I wouldn't recommend that last one. Regardless, this is still a pretty graphically solid MacBook. 3D designers might want to consider this one purely because of the video capabilities and the fact it costs just 20% of an M-series Macs with a much better GPU. This base model variant has 16GB of DDR4 memory on board, running at 2666 MHz speeds. These are available in 32 or 64GB versions as well, so it's nice to know there's some extra room there if necessary. Buy what you know you'll need though, since the RAM is soldered into place from the factory. Now overall, these specs aren't too shabby on paper, so I think it's time we go over some real downsides. First of all, it's important we talk about reliability in these things. I used one for a year and didn't have any problems, but it's not uncommon to hear of the NAND voltage regulator circuits failing, zapping the storage chips beyond repair entirely without any warning. Quite a scary prospect really, without any real remedy. This is one of the bigger reasons I never recommend using the 2019 MacBook Pro for any heavy jobs, as there's always that little risk you're going to lose something important. Unfortunately, I can't quantify the risk here. It's no 2011 MacBook Pro with those failing graphics chips, but there's a small chance something will go wrong. I'll let you make your mind up for yourself on that one if you're interested in buying. Software support on this MacBook is also waning. It's currently able to run the latest update of macOS, that's version 26 Tahoe. Beyond that though, Apple have advised it won't be getting whatever macOS 27 ends up being called. To be honest, this is probably the end of brand new updates for any Intel Mac, regardless of release date. The OpenCore Legacy Patcher has been a great way of sneaking around Apple's official release limits on older Macs, but Apple has essentially patched the method. Patchers would need to rewrite newer macOS versions entirely for x86 chips, since newer Macs use ARM processor architecture throughout. A near impossible task given the amount of work necessary. But all is not lost. This Mac will no doubt receive security updates until at least 2028, so the OS will be absolutely fine to use. App support from major developers like Adobe will probably start to drop off around 2029 at earliest. I mentioned performance already, and Apple Silicon is a big jump ahead of this thing. That gap is only increasing with the release of M2, 3, 4 and 5. But look, if you're able to look beyond raw performance, along with the other downsides I mentioned, this MacBook is a weird steal for £250 or $300 US. If you're thinking of buying a cheap laptop, maybe something to run Windows on, it might be worth picking one of these up. The 2019 16-inch MacBook Pro is a premium machine at a not-so-premium price. Thank you very much for watching. Liking and subscribing does go a long way if you have a second, and of course my Patreon page is linked in the description if you'd like to contribute financially. The What's on Your Screen Discord is also linked down below, and it's a busy place to talk about all kinds of technology, old and new. Subscribers, I'll see you next week.